MCOMnet, second Monday at 7 p.m., W5FC.
Mr. Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Does anyone need to use the repeater before we begin the 9 p.m. Skynet? Does This is Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima. My name is Brenda. I'll be your net control for this session of the BARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help viewers become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time by using the pro sign break and your call sign. Is there any emergency or priority traffic? This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control, that would be me, and stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.88 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5FC-R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio-video links are available online. Go to w5fc.org right now for the complete list. Remember to tell others about this popular net. All amateur operators are welcome. You need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. The net is 90 minutes long and structured in several parts. 1. General announcements. 2. Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, where and when you can look through a telescope. 3. National Space Society events. 4. Discussion topic of the evening. 5. What's up? 6. Space exploration and space history. 7. Constellation of the week. 8. Space launches of the week. 9. Recent astronomical discoveries. 10. Visible satellite passages over the next couple of days. 11. Astronomical Q&A. And 12. 73 rounds. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. So let's start with low power and short time check-ins. Please come now with your call phonetically, your name, and your location. Low power, short time, please come now.
This is Whiskey 5, Golf, Uniform, Sierra. It's Gus, far northeast Dallas, low power.
Kilo, Golf 5, Uniform, Foxtrot, Romeo. Jacob, Dallas, short time.
Okay, we have W5GUS, Gus, KG5UFR, Jacob, and WB5WGA, Greg. Okay, let's take regular check-ins now.
November 5, Bravo, Bravo, Bill and Irving.
Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray, Tom, Louisville.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Juliet Hotel Alpha, Chaz, Mesquite.
Oscar Bravo. Philip from Crandall.
Okay, we have a lull. N5BB, Bill. KE5ICX, Tom. KF5JHA, Chaz. And K5KOB, Philip. Let's pick up the Echolink people now.
Kilo Echo 0 Foxtrot Foxtrot Tango KE0 FFT in Illinois.
Golf 5 Zulu Mike Golf Joe in Arlington.
Golf 5 Bravo Zulu Whiskey J near Weatherford.
Okay, KE0 FFT, Mike, KG5, I think it's Zulu Mike Golf, Joe. Correct me if that's wrong.
I think that's correct. Kilo Golf 5 Zulu Mike Golf.
Thank you. I never won any prizes in penmanship. KG5BZWJ. Okay, anybody else now on any mode, please come now.
Kilo 5 Juliet Delta Whiskey John in Coppell.
This is Alpha Charlie 9 Kilo Victor Romeo and Grapevine.
This is Kilo Golf 5 Whiskey Victor Lima James in Carrollton.
This is November 5 Oscar Foxtrot Clay in Mesquite.
Kilo Golf 5 Uniform Kilo Uniform David Mesquite.
November 5 Alpha Juliet Delta Aaron North Dallas.
This is
WB4MFI Whiskey Bravo number 4 Mike Foxtrot India Ted Dallas Low Power.
Okay, we got K5JDW John, AC9KV Romy, KG5WVL James, N5OF Clay, I think that's, oh dear. David, what is your prefix, please? I know what I wrote down isn't right. It's something 5, uniform kilo uniform, but I missed the prefix.
Yes, that's KG5 UKU, David Bisky.
Thank you. Yeah, I really messed it up. N5AGD, Aaron. WB4 MFI, Ted. Anybody else?
I can't remember if you got me. N5BB.
N5EB, yes, you were one of the first ones. We did get you. Alrighty, well, we'll pick up some more later. I'm sure we'll have some more people join in, but let's go ahead. General announcements. Do we have any general announcements for this evening's net? This could be ham, astronomical, space, or of general interest to licensed hams.
KE5I6.
KE5I6, go ahead.
Well, it's a little late now, but folks picked up their kits today over at the Dallas Medical Center for tomorrow's or next week's lecture and lab, which is next Saturday, lecture and lab, and they're going to we'll be building a bunch of what do you call them? LED ropes, I guess, or LED light strips that can be programmed to do all sorts of crazy and wonderful things, blinking and changing color and all that stuff. So it's an opportunity. I don't know if Bill, WB50ZL, not WB50ZL, that's you. His call went out. At any rate, if you're interested, I think he may have some additional kits. If you're interested in the kits, I think there's $30, something like that. Send an email to me, Kilo Echo 5 India Charlie X-ray, KE5ICX at yahoo.com, and I will forward them on to Bill. We'll be doing the build on Saturday. It'll be virtual for now, and it should start, I believe, around 11 o'clock and run until about 1 or 2 o'clock. So you'll need a soldering iron. Some of the hardest stuff to do with this particular project is done. Go to w5fc.org as well. You'll find the information and contact info. If there's any kits left, and I think there may be a few, you can go ahead and join us online next Saturday and build them together. That's always a lot of fun, and a couple hours of your time, and then you can go ahead and build out from there. So light LED strips, you can build onto it, make it bigger, better, brighter, whatever you want, and do all sorts of really interesting things through programming. That's it from me, Brenda, KE5I6.
All right, thank you very much, Tom. We also now have Kelly, K5KTX, joining us. Okay. We have a number of nets throughout the week. The AMSAT Radio Amateur Satellite Group has 2 nets available to Dallas residents. On Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central, you'll need Echolink installed and be registered. You can find the net under Groups and AMSAT. Also, a live audio link is available on their website, AMSATnet.com. This net originates in Houston. Dallas AMSAT Net East, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, is every Tuesday at 8 p.m. on this repeater, 146.88 megahertz PL 110.9 Tuesdays. Tom, N5H5P is net control. All are welcome to check in. First Tuesday of the month is the DARC Club Night, so no AMSAT East that night. Dallas AMSAT Net West is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater, 147.140. Was the PL 110.9, positive offset. This next, let's see. Then on Mondays, first and third week, we have Ham Fixins. Second week, Income 101. Fourth week, GeekNet. Fifth week, Surprise Net. If we told you what it is, you wouldn't be as surprised. On-air participation is encouraged. Tuesdays, AMSAT East, 8 p.m., Q&As, info and news for amateur satellites. Fridays, CERT City Simulation, 7:30 p.m. Learn about emergency radio communications via CERT-trained amateur radio operators. Melissa, KI5GRH, is usually net control. Visit the most disaster-prone city in the universe every Friday. CERT City, all are welcome. Saturdays, TechNet, 7 to 8, and of course, Skynet. First and third Sundays, Dallas Amateur Radio Club meeting on the air, MODA. Daily lunch bunch, 12 noon, Monday through Friday. There's always a survey question. Eat lunch with us. And the ARRL Net, National Traffic System Training Net, every night at 6:30 p.m. All are welcome to check in on any or all of those nets. But we only mentioned one net for tonight. There's another one. The Afterglow Net, which starts just a few minutes after Skynet is finished. And this is the synopsis of tonight's movie. The strange man walked onto this, by the way, this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the actual movie. The strange man walked onto the stage and spoke. Picture, if you will, a small art house film populated by high-priced popular actors from an equally popular movie from the 1980s, somehow all paid on Friday. The man lit up a cigarette and walked to an interstate sign. Standing in front of it, the signage Interstate 60. He continued, but this is a story of a man on a journey, traveling on an unlisted interstate in pursuit of his paycheck. After all these high-priced actors sucked the limited budget dry. But just up ahead, he'll make an unscheduled left turn into what we like to call the excessive preposition zone. Join us for another empirical flight of fancy in Interstate 60 from 2002 tonight at about 10:30 p.m. You can keep up with all DARC events, nets, and activities by going to the club website, w5fc.org. All right, any additional check-ins, please come down. Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, where and when you can look to a telescope. Chaz, KF5JHA, do you have anything for us?
Thank you, Brenda. This is KF5GHA. The next Texas Astronomical Society Club of Dallas club meeting will be on Friday, April the 23rd. That's in 6 days at 7:30 p.m. The featured speaker will be Dr. Erin McDonald, and her topic will be the physics of Star Trek. This is going to be really interesting. In 2019, she was hired as the official science consultant for the ever-expanding Star Trek universe, and is currently working on 6 shows in development. That could be interesting, as I said. The TASK Club members will receive an email link sometime this week to the Zoom meeting, because it is a Zoom meeting. Hopefully later this year, I hope, TASK will resume having face-to-face meetings and will resume having public observing sessions. Check this out. Go to their website, texasastro.org, and you can get updated information and details about that. This is KF5, JHA, back to our net control. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you very much, Chaz. All right, next, National Space Society events and activities. Bill, N5BB, usually gives us some information on this.
Yes, Brenda, this is N5BB. I am the membership director of the North Texas chapter of the National Space Society. If we were not in the pandemic, we would be meeting on the second Sunday afternoon of every month in Irving. But because of the pandemic, we're still meeting virtually on WebEx. Our last meeting was this past Sunday, the 11th, and our speaker was a new flight director at NASA Johnson Spacecraft Center in Houston. So that was very interesting hearing him talk about the flight director job. Our next meeting will be virtual. It'll be on May the 9th, the second Sunday afternoon in May, Sunday afternoon in May at 4 p.m. I don't know the topic yet. If you have any interest in attending as a visitor to our virtual event, please send me an email to November 5 Bravo Bravo at ARRL.net. That's N5BB at ARRL.net. And you can also send me an email if you have any questions about the National Space Society or how to join. This is N5BB. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Right, it's time for the discussion topic of the evening. And I chose the Sts-1, the first space shuttle to orbit. Because this week we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of this first space shuttle flight, Sts-1, which stands for Space Transportation System-1, was the first orbital space flight of NASA's Space Shuttle program. The first orbiter, Columbia, launched on 12 April 1981 and returned on 14 April 54.5 hours later, having orbited the Earth 36 times. Columbia carried a crew of 2, Mission Commander John W. Young and pilot Robert L. Crippen. It was the first American crewed space flight since the Apollo Soyuz test program in 1975. Sts-1 was also the only maiden test flight of the new American spacecraft to carry a crew, although it was preceded by atmospheric testing of the orbiter and ground testing of the space shuttle system. The launch occurred on the 20th anniversary of the first human spaceflight, performed by Yuri Gagarin for the USSR. This is a coincidence rather than a celebration of the anniversary. The technical problem had prevented Sts-1 from launching 2 days earlier as was planned. We'll look a bit at the crew members. Commander John W. Young and pilot Robert L. Crippen were selected as the Sts-1 crew in early 1978. Young, with 4 previous missions, was the most experienced astronaut in NASA at the time. He flew twice on Gemini and twice on Apollo, walked on the moon in 1972 as the commander of Apollo 16, and became chief of the astronaut office in 1974. Crippen, part of the NASA Astronaut Group 7 after the cancellation of the Manned Orbiting Laboratory, was a rookie and would become the first of his astronaut group to fly in space. Prior to his selection on Sts-1, Crippen participated in the Skylab Medical Experiment Altitude Test and also served as a capsule communicator for all 3 Skylab missions and the Apollo Soyuz test project. Columbia carried extravehicular mobility units for both Young and Crippen in the event of an emergency spacewalk. If such an event occurred, Crippen would go outside the orbiter with Young standing by in case Crippen required assistance. As of April 1981, Young and Crippen trained the longest for a space mission before flying in NASA history. If Sts-1 had launched in March 79 as originally scheduled, we'd have been launched about half-trained, Young said. As no one had flown the shuttle before, they helped design the craft's controls, including 2,214 switches and displays in the cockpit, about 3 times as many as the Apollo command module, and many contingent procedures. Sts-1 carried 22 manuals, each 3 inches thick, and together weighing 63 pounds. The procedure for an electronics failure from a cooling system malfunction had 255 steps. This marked the first time that solid fuel rockets were used for a NASA crewed launch, although previous systems had used solid fuel motors for the escape towers or retro rockets. Sts-1 was also the first U.S. crewed space vehicle launched without an uncrewed powered test flight. The NASA mission objective for the maiden flight was to accomplish a safe ascent into orbit and return to Earth for a safe landing of orbiter and crew. The only payload carried on the mission was a Development Flight Instrumentation DFI package, which contains sensors and measuring devices to record the orbiter's performance and the stresses that occurred during launch, ascent, orbital flight, descent, and landing. All 113 flight test objectives were accomplished, and the orbiter's spaceworthiness was verified. Once on orbit, both crew members safed their ejection seats and unstrapped. The next critical event was payload bay door opening. This was essential to allow heat rejection from Columbia's door's space radiators. Failure to open these by the end of the second orbit would have resulted in a return to Earth at the end of the fifth orbit, before the limited capacity of the flash evaporator cooling system was exceeded. As they opened the doors, the crew noticed they had sustained damage to the thermal projection system, TPS, tiles on the pods. Those dang tiles. This was teleported to the ground. Shortly afterwards, Young, then Crippen, doffed their emergency ejection suits. The majority of the crew's approximately 53 hours in low Earth orbit was spent conducting systems tests. Despite the scheduling impact of efforts to image Columbia's TPS by utilizing external assets, these were all accomplished. They included crew optical alignment site, calibration, star tracker performance, inertial measurement unit performance, manual and automatic RCS testing, radiation measurement, propellant cross-feeding, hydraulics functioning, fuel cell purging, and photography. Young again took manual control for the remainder of the flight as they went subsonic, approaching the heading alignment circle, HAC. A wide left turn was flown to line up with lakebed runway 23. Main gear touchdown occurred on runway 23 at Edwards Air Force Base at 211 miles per hour equivalent airspeed, slightly slower and around 1/2 mile further down the runway than planned. This was the result of a combination of better than predicted orbiter lift-drag ratios and tailwind. Touchdown time was 10:21 a.m. PST on 14 April 1981. Despite 70 identified anomalies, the STS-1 mission was completely successful, and in most respects, Columbia performed optimally. After some modifications to the shuttle and to the launch and re-entry procedures, Columbia flew the next 4 shuttle missions. This may not have been as dramatic as the first moon landing, but it was still pretty exciting. I remember it just like it was yesterday, and it was very, very exciting. I watched a lot of it on TV at the time. And I bet you did too if you were alive. Next, more check-ins, please. Okay, our next segment is brought to us by Chaz, KF5JHA, and we call it What's Up? Go ahead, Chaz.
Thank you, Brenda. This is KF5JHA Chaz. My degree is in astrophysics, and I'm the astrophysics lab manager at Dallas College on the Brookhaven campus. We call this segment of Skynet What's Up. Slide number 2, please, Mr. Slide Changer. Hey, you can wave at everyone before you put up the slide if you want to. On the night of April the 21st and 22nd, the Lyrid meteor shower peaks with about 18 meteors per hour. Of course, you will see more meteors after midnight. When the moon is in the sky, very few meteors will be seen. So on April the 21st, the moon will set around 1 a.m., and after that, many more meteors can be seen. Slide number 3. On April the 24th, looking low in the western evening sky, you can find Venus and Mercury. Yes, Venus is now in the evening sky, but it's still kind of close to the sun, so it's hard to see. So you'll have to look at it in twilight. So Venus and Mercury in conjunction on April the 24th. Venus will be the brighter object and will be on the left. Mercury will be on the right and dimmer. Slide number 4, please. On May the 4th, in the early morning sky, you can see the conjunction of the moon, Jupiter, and Saturn. Remember, it was back in December when Jupiter and Saturn were really close to each other? Do you remember that? Wow. Okay. Slide number 5. Also on May the 4th, but switching to the evening sky, you can observe the planet Mercury next to the Pleiades star cluster. Remember, the Pleiades is that star cluster that's on the shoulder of Taurus the Bull. It's one of the closest open star clusters to us. Slide number 6, please. All right, back in 1986, did you see Comet Halley? If you did or didn't, you can still see it at the beginning of May. Well, at least small parts of the comet. When Comet Halley travels in its orbit, it leaves small bits of debris. These small bits of debris orbit the sun. At the early part of May each year, the Earth runs through this debris cloud. These particles run into the Earth's atmosphere so hard, so fast that they burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. This is the reason that the Eta Aquariid meteor shower, the Eta Aquariid meteor shower peaks on the night of May the 5th and 6th, with on an average about 55 meteors per hour. In other words, about 1 meteor per minute. More meteors are usually seen in the morning sky, remember, after midnight than before, and the hour just before morning twilight. So get up early on May the 6th rather than staying late up on May the 5th. But wait, inside the city lights, you might only see a dozen meteors in an hour because of light pollution. This year, the moon is just a couple of days past third quarter in the morning of the meteor shower peak. So you should start observing around midnight and stop observing when the moon rises, because that's going to diminish how many you can see. Once again, in the city, you might see a meteor about every 10 minutes or so. Now, the Texas state parks are now open for overnight camping, so go far, far away from the city lights to watch the meteors. Remember, the Texas state park system has over 80 parks and wildlife reserves where you can go camping. You will see many more meteors under the Texas state park system. The Orionid meteor shower in October is also caused by the debris of Halley's Comet. Slide number 7, please. On the night of May the 8th and 9th, the Eta Lyrid meteor shower will peak. Far away from the city lights, you might be able to see a handful of meteors in an hour of observing. And slide number 8, please. On April the 11th, The moon was at its new phase, so the current phase of the moon is a waxing crescent. I saw it through some clouds earlier this evening. On April the 14th, the moon will be at apogee, which is, it was at apogee on April the 14th, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is furthest from the Earth. And on April the 20th, the moon will be at its first quarter phase. On April the 26th, the moon will be full. On April the 27th, the moon will be at perigee, which is the point in the moon's orbit which is closest to the Earth. And on May the 3rd, the moon will be at its third quarter. On May the 11th, the moon will be new. And this is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide number 9, since we are well into spring, let's take a look at the evening sky. The constellation of Taurus the Bull can be found in the western evening sky. The V-shaped base of Taurus is the Hyades star cluster, and to the right, or north, is the Pleiades star cluster. Just talked about that just a few minutes ago. Now you know where to find it. Slide number 10, please. Above Taurus, in the northwestern sky, is the constellation of Auriga. The Charioteer, it looks like a pentagon. A pentagon is a five-sided figure. The bright star in the pentagon is Capella. Slide number 11. On the lower right of Auriga, the constellation of Perseus can be found. Perseus is the hero in the story that, I'll tell you that in the fall when we see some or all of the characters in the story in the sky. I think that Perseus looks sort of like a seal balancing a ball on his nose. Actually, it's really two balls of stars, the double star cluster of stars. Slide number 12, please. To the lower right of Perseus, you might see on the northwestern horizon the constellation of Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia is the queen sitting on her throne, but right now Cassiopeia looks like the capital letter E. Slide number 13. Now, looking high in the northern sky, you can find the Big Dipper, which is part of the constellation of Ursa Major, the Big Bear. The Big Dipper is an asterism. Right now, the Big Bear and the Big Dipper are sort of upside down in the sky. It is always upside down in the spring, and that's why it rains so much in the spring, because of all the water being dumped out. Slide number 14. Using the two stars on the opposite side of the Big Dipper's handle and drawing a line from the bottom star called Merak to the side of the bowl, the top star is called Doobie on that side of the bowl, and keep on drawing a line until you run to a special star. This special star is called the North Star, or Polaris. It is not the brightest star in the sky. In fact, it's the 49th brightest star in the sky. It is so close to our north celestial pole in the sky that it barely moves through the night and throughout the year. Polaris is the in-star in the handle of the Little Dipper, which is part of the Little Bear. Now, why does the Big and Little Bears have such long tails? Well, there's a story behind that, but that's a tale too long to tell right now. You know, I've got more jokes later on. Slide number 15, please. And this is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. Once again, the Texas Astronomical Society Club meeting. Next meeting will be held just in 6 days on April the 23rd at 7:30 p.m. It's a virtual meeting over Zoom. If you're a club member, you'll get a link to that club Zoom meeting. The featured speaker is Dr. Erin McDonald, and her topic will be the physics of Star Trek. TexasAstro.org will give you the updated information and details on that. Slide number 16, please. I want to welcome our students from Dallas College on the Brookhaven campus that are listening and watching to Skynet tonight, probably either over YouTube or Facebook. Students, just a reminder, if you want to get stargazing class credit for this, then remember to fill out the form on eCampus by answering the questions and do this within the next 48 hours. Now, do any of you out there in radio land have any questions or need a fill on any information, or do you just have a general astronomy question? I don't know everything, but I might know the answer to your question, or someone else on the net might. Come now with your call sign if you have a question.
K5, JDW.
Well, Mr. John, you must be here locally, because you're not on Echolink. JJ was asking me about the Baylor Bears. Maybe I should talk about them. They did win something recently. John, go ahead. What's your question?
Remind us, since the Earth, changes in its rotation and stuff, our position point to which, constellation and stars changes, of course. Just remind us, I know you maybe said this in the past, but remind us how far Polaris actually gets more away from our celestial north, by what period of time. I hope that makes sense. K5 JDW.
Yes, John, that does make some sense for me anyway. So the Earth's rotational pole is pointing really close to where Polaris is in the sky. During our lifetime, we really don't see much of a change. Not visually. We could measure the change very slightly. But it does point in a little bit different direction over a period of time. If you've ever seen a toy top, when you spin it, the pointing part, the top of the top, the axis of rotation actually moves. And it moves usually in a little circle. That circle is called precession. And that's what the Earth goes through. It goes through a precession circle. It takes about 26,000 years or so for the precession circle to go through one circular rotation. So about 13,000 years ago, the bright star Vega was our North Star. And about 12 to 13,000 years from now, it'll be our North Star once again. Hey, if you go back in time during the building of the pyramids about 5,000 years ago, Thuban, that was a star, not very bright, in the constellation of Draco, the dragon, was the North Star. So, did that answer your question, John?
Thanks, Jazz. Yes, it does. Gives me something to live for. K5 JDW.
Well, John, if you live that long, that'll be a really interesting thing. Okay, slide number 17. So as the moon waned during the first part of April, so these words for this segment of Skynet: stay safe, keep well, pray for our world. It's the only one where humans live. So until next week, actually I'll be back with another segment in a few minutes. Keep looking up so you know what's up. And this is KF5 JHA Chaz. Back to our net control, Brenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaz. This is WV5OZL. Do we have any more check-ins?
Kilo 5, Golf Lima Delta, Randy Rowlett.
Kilo 5, Bravo Whiskey Charlie. My name's Albert. I'm driving through Grapevine, listening in.
Okay, we got Kilo 5, Golf Lima Delta, Randy, and Kilo 5, Bravo Whiskey Charlie, Albert. Welcome to the net. All right, next up we have space exploration and space history. It was supposed to be my turn tonight, but because I was net control, Tom, KE5ICX, offered to do it for me, so I'll call on him.
All right, thank you, Brenda. This is KE5ICX. My name's Tom. And I'm not going to give you any space exploration news. I think there's more coming elsewhere, but I do have birthdays and space histories. This has got to be a record. I think I have 21 birthdays for this for tonight's net. April 11th, 1932, birth of Francis Gregory Neubeck. He was an American pilot astronaut from 65 to 1969. The manned orbiting laboratory, which you heard about, one of our astronauts who was a part of the Crippen was a part of that program as well. He was a co-astronaut. Many of the astronauts that were part of MOL went over to the astronaut corps for NASA when that program was canceled in 1968, I think it was. Next up, we have Frederick Hamilton, Rick Hawk. He was an American test pilot astronaut from 1978 to 89, flew 114 combat missions at Vietnam. He spent 18 days in space and flew on Sts-7 in 1983. Next up was the birth of Anatoly Nikolaevich Berezovoy, Russian, obviously, cosmonaut from 1970 to 92. He was on one space flight for 211 days in space, flew on orbit on the Soyuz T-5 in 1982, and from 1992 to 1999 was Deputy President, Russian Space Federation. He retired for medical reasons due to injuries he received. Oops, forgot to put his picture up. There's his picture, Mr. Happy, as he was a victim of an armed robbery. Ugh. Next is 1949, Dr. Jean-Jacques Favier, French material scientist and cosmonaut from 1985 to 1996. One space flight, 16 days in space, flew on STS-78 in 1996. And April 14th, 1929, birth of Dr. Richard Agar Bill Thornton. He was an American physician and mission specialist, astronaut from 67 to 94, 2 space flights, 13 days in space, flew on orbit on STS-8 in 1983 and STS-51B. Born April 14, 1937, is Spetsnaz. Russian, he was engineer cosmonaut from 65 to 92. I don't see any flights for him, unfortunately. Next up is Anatoly Fabridrov, Russian, from Russian cosmonaut from 65 to 74, graduated from, well, you don't need to know that. He was a flight controller for the Kaliningrad grad until he retired in 1992. Next, oh geez, birth of Valentin Lebedev, another Russian, engineer cosmonaut, flew on Soyuz 13, Salyut 7, and EO-1. I don't know what EO-1 is. I guess it's Salyut 7 EO-1. Next up, April 14th. I know it's all April 14th. It's crazy. Birth of Irina Promina. She was a Russian engineer astronaut from 1980 to 1992. Then in 1959, birth of Martin Babiak. He's from Slovakia. He was pilot cosmonaut from 1998 to 1999. As of January 2001, Babiak was a colonel of the Slovak Air Force studying at the Air War College in Alabama, USA. That's interesting. Oh my, none of the pictures are changing because it's on the wrong screen. Jeez, I hate it when that happens. All right, there's the right guy. Let's see, birth of Nikolai Stevnovich Provakin. He was a Russian engineer cosmonaut from 67 to 83, graduated from Technical College Air Force in 1952, and graduated from the Air Force Engineering Academy. He was part of cosmonaut training May 67 through August of 67, and worked at Energia NPO. Let's see, 1951. I know it's a lot of people. What can I say? John Lynch Phillips. He was an American physicist mission specialist from 96 to 2011, 3 space flights, 203 days in space, flew on STS-100 in 2001, Soyuz TMA-6 and STS-119. Next we have Marsha Ivins. She's an American Engineer Mission Specialist from 1984 to 2010. Flight engineer, 5 space flights for a total of 55 days in space. Flew on STS-32, STS-46, 62, 81, and 98. Bingo. Next is birth of Gregory Harbaugh, or Greg Harbaugh. He is an American engineer, astronaut from 87 to 2001, 4 space flights, 34.1 days in space, flew on STS-39, 54, 71, and 82. Next, April 15th, birth of Mikhail Koyenko. He worked as an engineer at K-Bomb, then astronaut training completed in 1999, 516 cumulative days in space, 2 space flights, 516 in space, flew on orbit on Soyuz TMA-18 and TMA-16M. April 15th, 1965, Soichi Noguchi is part of the Japanese Engineer Mission Specialist in 1996. He was on 2 space flights, I think it was with JAXA, from 177 days in space and flew on STS-114 and TMA-17. Next up, oh yes, there's more. David Brown. He was an American Physician Mission Specialist from 96 to 2003. He perished in the Columbia Shuttle disintegration during reentry, had 1 space flight. STS flew on orbit in STS-107. Okay. Next up is Michael Barrett. He is an American Physician Mission Specialist from 2000 on. He's still flying, I guess, or still part of the program. American Physician Mission Specialist, 211 days in space, flew on Soyuz TMA-14 and STS-133. Next is Sergei Vasilov-Volkov. He's from Kazakhstan. He was in cosmonaut training from October 1990 to 92. Oh, that's not good. Drowned during recovery training in the Black Sea, so I guess he never flew in space. Next, April 17th, 1964, Andrei Borysenko, Russian and engineer cosmonaut from 2003 on. He has 2 space flights for 337 days in space. Oh, thank goodness, that's the end on that. So next up we have This Week in Space History. Many of you already know, April 11th, 1970, the launch of Apollo 13. That was the mission with Commander Jim Lovell, Command Module pilot Jack Swigert, Lunar Module pilot Fred Hayes. 2 days after the mission was launched, spacecraft well on its way to the moon, an oxygen tank exploded, scrubbing the lunar landing and putting the crew in jeopardy. Working with Mission Control, the crew used their lunar module as a lifeboat, even rigged an adapter so in a command module air scrubber would work in the lunar module, preventing a dangerous buildup of carbon dioxide. The mission ended safely with the crew splashing down on April 17th, 1970, but its can-do spirit lives on at NASA. It shows the efforts of thousands that return the space shuttle fleet to flight, and it will ultimately help NASA fulfill its exploration vision, returning to the moon and journeying to Mars and beyond. Venus Express arrives at Mars. This is in 2006 of April 11th. A 53-minute orbit insertion burn began at 7:10 GMT, leaving the spacecraft in a highly elliptical orbit around Venus. It's very technical. But at any rate, it ended up in Venus orbit, placed the satellite in a 257 by 70,463 kilogram orbit on the 23rd of April. Boy, I forgot to turn that into something that we could actually understand. Next up, and this one is a big deal, launch of Vostok 1 in 1961. was the first space flight of the Vostok program and the first human space flight in history. Vostok 3KA space capsule was launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome on April 12, 1961. The Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin aboard, making him the first human to cross into outer space. The orbital space flight consisted of a single orbit around the Earth, which skimmed the upper atmosphere at 91 nautical miles at its lowest point. The flight took about 108 minutes from launch to landing. Gagarin parachuted to the ground separately from his capsule after ejecting at 23,000 feet altitude. And as you already know, as our featured presentation, Sts-1 was the first orbital space flight. This was launched in 1981. Was the first orbital space flight of NASA's Space Shuttle program. The first orbiter, Columbia, launched on 12th April 1981 and returned on the 14th of April, 54.5 hours later, having orbited the Earth 36 times. In 1985, on this same day, we had the STS-51D, was the 16th flight of NASA's Space Shuttle program. The 4th flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery was delayed, let's see here, on April 19th. After a week-long flight, Discovery conducted the 5th shuttle landing at KSC. The shuttle suffered extensive brake damage and a ruptured tire during landing. This forced all subsequent shuttle landings to be done at Edwards Air Force Base, California, until the development and implementation of nose-wheel steering made landings at KSC more feasible. On to April 13th, 1959, launched Discoverer 2 and Air Force Thor Gina A booster lifted Discoverer 2 into orbit from Vandenberg Air Force Base. Discoverer 2 became the world's first satellite to be stabilized in orbit on all three axes, to be maneuvered on command from Earth, and to separate a re-entry vehicle on command and to send its re-entry vehicle back to Earth. In 1974, on this day, the spacecraft, launch of Westar 1. The spacecraft engaged in practical applications and uses of space technologies such as weather and communications. In 2005, on this day, a launch of Soyuz Team A6, the first human spaceflight to the International Space Station. It carried a crew of 3 to Expedition 11 to the International Space Station. It was 26 crewed mission to the ISS. On April 16th, 1972, was the launch of Apollo 16 from Cape Canaveral. Apollo 16 was the 10th crewed mission in the United States Apollo space program, the 5th and penetulant, I can't even say that word, never could, to land on the moon, and the second to land in the lunar highlands. The second of Apollo's J missions, it was crewed by Commander John Young, who we spoke about earlier on STS-1, the lunar module pilot Charlie Duke, and command module pilot Ken Mattingly. Launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida, the mission lasted 11 days, 1 hour and 51 minutes, and concluded at 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on April 27th. On this date, on April 17th, 1967, was the launch of the Surveyor 3. It was the third lander of the American uncrewed Surveyor program, sent to explore the surface of the moon in '67. It was the first mission to carry a surface soil sampling scoop, which I've seen. It is at the Cosmosphere up in Kansas. Surveyor 3 was visited by Apollo 12 astronauts P. Conrad and Alan Bean. In November of '69, it remains the only probe visited by humans on another world. The Apollo 12 astronauts excised several components of Surveyor 3, including the television camera, and returned them to Earth for study. And this is KE5ICX. Next up is, let me reduce the picture size here, the return of Apollo 13. After 4 hours before re-entry on April 17th, the service module was jettisoned, and the crew took photographs and made several visual observations of the damaged area. This is the, I mentioned earlier on the launch, the ill-fated Apollo 13 that was able to bring all 3 astronauts home. About an hour before the splashdown, the command module was powered up, the lunar module was jettisoned, parachutes were deployed as planned, and Odyssey landed in mid-Pacific, 6.4 kilometers from the recovery ship, the USS Iwo Jima, at 1:07 p.m. Eastern Time. The astronauts were picked up by helicopter, transported to the recovery ship less than an hour after splashdown. And then finally, I guess I don't have a picture on this one, I've got April 17th, 1998, launch of STS-90, flown as Space Shuttle Columbia. The 16-day mission marked the last flight of the European Space Agency Space Lab Laboratory Module, which had first flown on Columbia on STS-9. It was also the last daytime landing for the Columbia. That was a lot of stuff. Now you know why I didn't give any recent stuff this week. Probably should have. There were some interesting things that happened. But I'm going to go back to net control and get something from Greg. This is KE5 ICX, back to net control.
Oh, thank you, Tom. This is WB50ZL. Do we have any more check-ins? Okay, our next segment is called Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week, and I'll call on Chaz, KF5JHA, to fill us in. Go ahead, Chaz.
Thank you, Brenda. Once again, this is Chaz, KF5JHA. Slide number 18, please. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week is named in honor of Silent Key Carolyn, KC5OZT. Carolyn contributed to Skynet each week almost from its beginning in 2012 until May of 2019, with a detailed look at one particular constellation each week. Since there are about 52 easily visible constellations seen in Texas throughout the year, out of the 88 total constellations, so Miss Carolyn covered the entire sky in a year. In her honor, we've continued the third edition of a constellation per week. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week this week is actually two. Sextans, the sextant, and Hydra, the water snake. Okay, slide number 19. You've been waiting for this all night long. I know this. These are the jokes that are usually related to a constellation. It is that case now. What do you call a snake that is 3.14 meters long? That would be a python. Oh, come on. I hear you laughing out there. What do you call a snake who works for the government? A civil serpent. Which are the best mathematicians among the snake family? Now, usually if Billy is online, she'll get this one. The adders, of course. She's a mathematician. Yeah, okay. What is the snake's favorite subject in school? Come on, I hear you laughing over here and echoing. History. What did the snake give his wife after Skynet? Well, maybe it would be the Afterglow movie after that. A good night hiss. And finally, please. Sextans is the constellation name for a sextant, an instrument used to measure stellar positions and often used in celestial navigation. Sextans is one of the more modern constellations. It's named to commemorate a loss of Helveticus' own sextans, which was destroyed by a fire in his observatory in September of 1679. He originally named the constellation Sextans Urania. The sextants of Urania, its name has been since shortened to just Sextans. Slide number 21. Alpha Sextans is the brightest star in Sextans, shining at magnitude 4.49. It is the only star in Sextans brighter than fifth magnitude, so most of the stars in this constellation are really faint. It is a white A-type giant star, approximately 285 light years from the Earth. It lies less than a quarter of a degree south of the celestial equator. So if you can find it, if you can see it away from the city lights, that's where really the celestial equator is located. Beta Sextans is a blue-white B-type main sequence dwarf located approximately 406 light years from Earth. It is slightly variable, and it varies only a little bit from 5th magnitude to 5.1 magnitude. But it is a very short period. It's 15 days in length. Slide number 22, please. NGC 3115 is nicknamed the Spindle Galaxy. It is best known deep sky object in this constellation, and only the object and sextants discussed in detail in Burnham's Celestial Handbook. Robert Burnham Jr. wrote that NGC 3115 was originally thought to be a flattened elliptical galaxy of type E7, but the Palomar 200-inch telescope discovery of its flattened equatorial plane surrounding the nucleus led it to be reclassified as an S0 galaxy. And maybe sometime in the future we'll have to talk about the designations for different types of galaxies. Today it's generally classified as an S0 lenticular galaxy. Slide number 23, please. Sextans dwarf spheroidal. It's a dwarf elliptical galaxy. It's a satellite of the Milky Way, discovered fairly recently in 1990. It is the 8th dwarf satellite galaxy of the Milky Way that was discovered. It's about 290,000 light years from the galactic center. It shines at about magnitude 12, which doesn't sound very faint for a challenge object, but so you realize its light is spread over a 90 to 65 arc-minute size. Definitely, it's a hard object to see. For those of you then in the know, we call it a DMIO, David Movie Imaginary Object. But you might be able to observe it photographically if you photograph it. Slide number 24, please. Sextans A, a dwarf irregular galaxy located 4 million light years away. It is a member of the local group, and photographs it as an interesting square shape. It is a visual magnitude of 11.9. It's only 5.9 by 4.9 arc minutes in size. So this one might be a doable object with a big light bucket. It was discovered by Fritz Zwicky in 1942. And this is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide number 25. Hydra, the water snake, is the largest constellation in the entire sky. It occupies an area of 1,303 square degrees in the night sky. It stretches across 102 degrees. The constellation was first cataloged by Greek astronomer Ptolemy. You may have heard of him before. In the 2nd century, Hydra constellation is usually associated with a second of Hercules' labors in Greek mythology. Hydra was the giant multi-headed creature. In mythology, Hydra had 9 heads. One of them was immortal. The celestial Hydra is depicted with only 1 head, presumably the immortal one. Slide number 26. Alphard, which is Alpha Hydra, the brightest star in Hydra, magnitude 1.96. For astronomy students, we were on campus observing. This is one of the stars. You'd have to measure its altitude and azimuth. It's derived from the Arabic word meaning solitary one, Alphard. Oh, okay. Which is appropriate because it's relatively isolated from other bright stars. It's also known as Core Hydra, which means the dragon's heart. And a telescope appears to be a yellowish tint to it. We're still on slide number 26. Epsilon Hydra is observing, seeing and transparency are poor sometimes because it's kind of faint, and it's barely able to be split with an 8-inch telescope. The comparison star is coming and going sometimes when you're looking through it, depending on the viewing conditions. The last star in Hydra I wanted to talk about is in Hydra. It's easily double stars to split. It looked like a distant pair of headlights, maybe a tiny bit dimmer, one of them than the other one. And they're both kind of yellowish in color. Slide number 27, please. M83, the southern pinwheel galaxy discovered by LaSalle in 1752. Messier added it to his catalog in 1781. Current estimates place this galaxy about 15 million light years away. Though it's a face-on spiral, it appeared to have an oval shape instead of a circular one in a view of an 8-inch telescope. Using averted vision, that means not looking at it directly, but looking off to the edge of the eyepiece, using not the center of your eye, but the side of your eye to see it, which is more sensitive to faint light. You can get some hint of some structure with an 84 power eyepiece. Larger instruments clearly show spiral arms that looks like a central bar through it and various knots and dark spots. Stephen James Amira says that this galaxy begs for a higher power. So we're talking about higher magnification. Slide number 28, please. M68, globular cluster discovered by Minchen in 1780. Messier added it to his short list afterwards. M68 appears fainter than most Messier-listed globular clusters. M68 is no M13. M13 is that bright globular cluster in Hercules. In an 8-inch telescope, it only starts to resolve. At first glance, you could only make out a handful of individual stars, but using averted vision, you might be able to bring out more stars. The rest of the cluster looks kind of nebulous. Slide number 29, M48 is an easy-to-find open cluster with binoculars or a finder scope. You only need 40 power and an 8-inch telescope to see all of it at once. It's easy to discover this cluster. You can actually connect the dots and see triangular outlines for the cluster and some other shapes too. Many of the stars in this cluster are making interesting pairings or shapes, as I was saying. And this is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide number 30, please. There are more astronomical leak observing program objects in the constellation of Sextans, the Sexton and Hydra, the water snake. I've just given you a sampling of a few of those objects. The Astronomical League has over 70, I believe it's 73, different observing programs, most of which have around 100 objects. If you observe about 10 different objects in an observing program each month, then you can earn an observing certificate and a pen in about a year. Slide number 31, and that is Miss Carolyn's Constellations of the Week, Sextans, the Sextant, and Hydra, the water snake. I want to thank my friends Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Harwell for the research and words on deep sky objects that I've used, borrowed, and stolen for tonight. I also at times use the website constellation-guide.com for information. Next week we're going to take a look at just one singular constellation, Centaur, the Centaur. And we'll take it back to Brenda, our net control. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you very much, Taz. This is WV50ZL. Do we have any more check-ins?
Kilo India 5, Gulf Romeo Hotel.
Okay, we got one. Q5 Golf Romeo Hotel. Melissa, thanks for joining us. Okay, next up, space launches for the week. Tom, KE5 ICX. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Miss Brenda. This is KE5 ICX. I'm back. Let's see. Space launches, I get most of my information, if not all of it, from Spaceflight Now launch schedule from spaceflightnow.com/launch schedule. April 22nd, Falcon 9 crew of 2. Falcon 9 rocket will launch Crew Dragon spacecraft on its second operational flight with astronauts on board to the International Space Station. Now that will be the third flight actually, but the second operational for NASA. NASA astronaut Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur, Japanese astronaut Hiko Hoshide, and European Space Agency astronaut Thomas Pesquet will launch on a Crew Dragon spacecraft. The Crew Dragon will return to splashdown at sea. And that's all I got on that one. April 25th, Soyuz will launch from Vostokty Cosmodrome in Russia. The Russian Soyuz rocket will launch 36 satellites into orbit for OneWeb, which is developing a constellation of hundreds of satellites in low Earth orbit for low latency broadband communications. It'll use the Soyuz 2.1B rocket with the Fregat. Don't forget the upper stage. Forgot upper stage. April 26th, Delta IV Heavy and Roll 82. This will launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base. United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy rocket will launch a classified spy satellite for U.S. National Reconnaissance Office. That's a polar orbit, by the way. That's generally what they fly there. The largest of the Delta IV family, the Heavy version features 3 Common Core boosters mounted together to form a triple body rocket. That should be pretty impressive. April 27th, 28th, this will be a launch of an Ariane Space Vega rocket designated VV-18. Will launch the Pleiades Neo 3 Earth observation satellite for Airbus. Pleiades Neo 3 is the first of 4 of the high-resolution Earth observation satellites built, owned, and operated by Airbus. The Vega rocket will also launch multiple rideshare payloads. April 28th, Falcon 9 Starlink V version, or V1.0L24. They've been launching these for the last 3 years. This will launch from Cape Canaveral Launch Complex 40. The Falcon 9 rocket will launch 25th batch, approximately 60 satellites for SpaceX Starlink broadband network, mission designated V1.0L24. April 29th, a Long March 5B at Tianyi-1 will launch from Wenchang, China. The Long March 5B Chinese rocket will launch the Tianyi-1, a core module for the Chinese space station in low Earth orbit. This will be a multi-module space station. They are upsizing from what they had with Tiangong 1 and 2. In April, there'll be a GSLV Mark II GSAT-1 launch from Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota, India. This is a geosynchronous satellite launch designated GSLV F-10 and will launch from India's first geo-imaging satellite, or GSAT-1. Will provide continuous remote sensing observations over the Indian subcontinent in geostationary orbit for more than 22,000 miles. And then finally, we have a launch from the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport in Wallops Island, Virginia. A Rocket Lab Electron rocket will launch on its first mission from a new launch pad at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport of Wallops Island, Virginia. The launch customer, U.S. Air Force. The mission will launch an experimental mission for the space test program called Monolith with a space weather instrument. The Monolith mission will demonstrate the ability of a small satellite to support large aperture payloads. That's all I know about it. That's it. Back to net control. This is KE5I6.
Thank you, Tom. This is WV50ZL. Let me find my article here. Next up is Astronomical Discoveries. This is entitled Banked Meteorites Yield Clues to Planetary Atmospheres. In a novel laboratory investigation of the initial atmospheres of Earth-like rocky planets, researchers at UC Santa Cruz heated pristine meteorite samples in a high-temperature furnace and analyzed the gases released. The results, published April 15th in Nature Astronomy, suggest that the initial atmospheres of terrestrial planets may differ significantly from many of the common assumptions used in theoretical models of planetary atmospheres. This information will be important when we start being able to observe exoplanet atmospheres with new telescopes and advanced instrumentation, said first author Maggie Thompson, a graduate student in astronomy and astrophysics at UC Santa Cruz. The early atmospheres of rocky planets are thought to form mostly from gases released from the surface of the planet as a result of the intense heating during the accretion of planetary building blocks and later volcanic activity early in the planet's development. When the building blocks of a planet are coming together, the material is heated and gases are produced, and if the planet is large enough, the gases will be retained as an atmosphere, explained co-author Miriam Tellis, assistant professor of Earth and Planetary Sciences at UC Santa Cruz. We're trying to simulate the laboratory in the laboratory this very early process when a planet's atmosphere is forming, so we can put some experimental constraints on that story. The researchers analyzed 3 meteorites of a type known as carbonaceous chondrites, which have a composition considered representative of the material from which the sun and planets formed. These meteorites are leftover materials from the building blocks that went into forming the planets of our solar system, Thompson said. Chondrites are different from other types of meteorites in that they didn't get hot enough to melt, so they have held on to some of the more primitive components that can tell us about the composition of the system around the time of planet formation. Working with materials, scientists in the physics department, the researchers set up a furnace connected to a mass spectrometer and a vacuum system. As the meteorite samples were heated to 1200 degrees Celsius, the system analyzed the volatile gases produced from the minerals in the sample. Water vapor was the dominant gas with significant amounts of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, and smaller amounts of hydrogen and hydrogen sulfide gases also released. According to Tellis, models of planetary atmospheres often assume solar abundances, that is, a composition similar to the sun and therefore dominated by hydrogen and helium. Based on outgassing from meteorites, however, you would expect water vapor to be the dominant gas, followed by carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, she said. Using solar abundances is fine for large Jupiter-sized planets that acquire their atmospheres from the solar nebula, but smaller planets are thought to get their atmospheres more from outgassing. The researchers compared the results with the predictions from chemical equilibrium models based on the composition of the meteorites. Qualitatively, we get pretty similar results to what the chemical equilibrium models predict should be outgassed, but there are also some differences, Thompson said. You need experiments to see what actually happens in practice. We want to do this for a wide variety of meteorites to provide better constraints for the theoretical models of exoplanetary atmospheres. Other researchers have done heating experiments with meteorites, but those studies were for other purposes and used different methods. A lot of people are interested in what happens when meteorites enter Earth's atmosphere. So those kinds of studies were not done with this framework in mind to understand outgassing, Thompson said. The 3 meteorites analyzed for this study were the Murchison chondrite, which fell in Australia in '69, Gimlet Wenzelwan, collected in Western Sahara in 2013, and Aquarius Zarcus, which fell in Costa Rica in 2019. It may seem arbitrary to use meteorites from our solar system to understand exoplanets around other stars, but studies of other stars are finding that this type of material is actually pretty common around other stars. All right, that's the end of that. That's from ScienceDaily.com. So, next up, almost out of time. Are there any visible satellite passages over the next couple of days you want to mention? KE5, ICX, Tom?
Well, I suspected we would run a little long tonight, but there are only two that I'm going to mention. The International Space Station, April 25th, minus 3.6 magnitude, 5:43 a.m. It will be out of the west-southwest, reach its highest point at 5:45, which is at 60 degrees, and fall to the northwest at 5:48. Next night, April 26th, minus 3.5 magnitude. That's very bright, by the way. It's easily seen here in Dallas. 4:58 a.m. You got to get up. This is a partial pass. It'll appear at 66 degrees out of the east-southeast, which is its highest pass, and it'll fall to the east-southeast at 10 degrees at 5:01. That's it. That's all I'm going to give tonight. Back to net control. KE5ICX.
Thank you, Tom. Before we go, I want to remind everybody to get up early Monday morning and watch the first flight of Ingenuity. I believe it's 5:15 here, but don't quote me. Just look it up. All right. Do we have any more check-ins? Okay. We're going to wrap it up, and in a few minutes we'll come back here for Afterglow. So tonight we had 22 hams participating on the air. Thanks to all of you who checked into this evening. We hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this and all other DARC nets. If you would like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@w5fc.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net and astronomy in general on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our audio and video streams, video archives, and other useful internet resources by going to w5fc.org at the conclusion of this net. Until next Saturday night, this is Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima. Name is Brenda. We'll be closing the net at 10:20 p.m. local time and returning the repeater to normal amateur use. 73, everybody, and enjoy the evening discovering the universe.
And this is KE5ICX. We will be back in 5 minutes to discuss the movie Interstate 60 from 2002. Is it science fiction? We'll find out. Actually, it's kind of like science fiction.
I'm completely operational.
So come back, and somebody might actually get to be net control. So come back in 5 minutes. We'll do Interstate 60, and I'll start begging for net control stations somewhere between then. Back in 5. This is KE5ICX. Would anybody on frequency like to be net control? If you're net control, you get to win this highly exclusive DATCU pen from datcu.org. It's a green pen. It's from the DATCU Credit Union. These are very valuable. Hardly any are ever turned out because they're cheap and they don't like to give out pens. If you'd like to win this pen, please volunteer as net control for tonight's Afterglow Movie Net. Please come now.
N5BB, if I win, can I donate the pen to a hitchhiker?
Oh, Bill, you can donate it to whomever you would like, or give it to them, or you can even use it as a device of I don't know, whatever it is. I'm eating, but yes, you're on, man. You're the guy, and I'll send this pen to you immediately. KE5ICX.
Okay. My address is P.O. Box 73. On Interstate 60. N5BB is preparing and will be net control for the Afterglow Net tonight, which is about Interstate 60, a 2002 film, which is, I guess, fantasy. Tom, shall you read the description? This is N5BB.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. I'll actually read the one from Wikipedia if you'd like.
Ooh, I guess that's allowable, although it may be a little bit too straightforward. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you, Bill. This is interesting, too. The opening introduces O.W. Grant, played by Gary Oldman, who I didn't even realize that was Gary Oldman. This man is a person of 1,000 disguises. He was in last week's movie, by the way. He who carries a pipe in the shape of a monkey head. He demonstrates his mysterious powers in an encounter with a businessman, Michael J. That guy, when granting the man's wish results in the businessman being hit by a truck. That's it. Michael J. Fox appears in this movie for about 5 minutes. Neil, however, aspires to be an artist despite the lack of support from his domineering father, analytical girlfriend. At a party for his 22nd birthday, O.W. Grant is a waiter who serves the cake. After Neil blows out the candles, he says he wished for an answer to his life. His father responds by handing him an admissions letter to law school. As the family goes outside to look at the red convertible that Neil's dad brought him, a bucket falls onto Neil's head, knocking him out. Neil wakes up in the hospital where the father, named Ray, played by Christopher Lloyd, comes in and does a quick sight test using playing cards. Neil has to name the suit of the cards. Neil asks if he got it right. Ray points out the cards are actually red spades and black hearts, emphasizing that things aren't always as they seem. After getting out of the hospital, Neil sees the mystery woman that he's been dreaming about in a billboard advertisement, but the billboard company insists the billboard is blank. When Neil checks the billboard, he sees a new picture of a beautiful blonde. This, in the named inscription, call 555-1300. Neil calls the number, and the recorded voice tells him that he has an appointment at 555 Olive Street, Suite 1300. In the appointment, he again meets Ray, who gives him a package delivered to Robin Fields in a town called Denver in Colorado. No, not Denver, Denver. Ray tells him that he'll find Denver by taking Interstate 60. With no Interstate 60 on the road map, Neil sets out west and encounters O.W. Grant on the roadside. Grant gives Neil directions to an unlisted Interstate 60, and on his journey he meets 1, a promiscuous woman looking for perfect sex, 2, a man who can consume unnatural quantities of food and drink, 3, a lonely mother looking for her son who is living in a city where the population is addicted to a government-controlled drug, and 5, Miss James, played by Anne Margaret, who runs a museum of art fraud that actually contains real masterpieces posing as fakes. When Neil reaches the town of Morlaw, I get it now, where all citizens or lawyers spend their days suing each other, he finally finds Lynn, the imprisoned mystery woman he's been dreaming about and painting. Lynn explains that she's met O.W. Grant and wished to find the right guy. They spend the night together at the Fork of the Road Motel. Surprise. Neil also makes a painting of the motel. Neil leaves to deliver the package to Denver while Lynn stays behind. On the radio, Neil hears the report of a reported murder on the loose, and the description matches his car. He abandons his vehicle to hitchhike. Arriving in Denver, Neil meets Robin Fields, who turns out to be O.W. Grant. After opening the package, which holds a replacement monkey head pipe for O.W.'s broken one, Grant uses his magic powers to warp Neil back in time, where he wakes up in a hospital before he first encountered Ray. Leaving the hospital, Neil confronts his father and asserts his right to live his life without his father's interference. His sister takes him to an art gallery where Neil sees his painting of Fork in the Road. The girl who resembles Lynn talks to him about commissioning him to do a series of paintings on roadside motels and diners. The end. Back to net control. This is KE5ICX.
Thank you, Tom. Well, this was a strange movie. Let's start with check-ins. Let's start with RF check-ins. If you'd like to check into the Afterglow net, I will go on and pre-check in Tom, since I know he's here. Who else would like to check in for the Afterglow net? We are discussing Interstate 60. Please come now. This is in 5BB, net control.
Delhi V5OZL, Brenda.
Oh, I forgot to ask. Brenda, did you see the movie?
How could I forget to say? Yes, I did.
Very good. Who else would like to check in? And did you see the movie? Go ahead.
Kilo Golf 5 Bravo. Kilo Golf 5 Bravo to the Whiskey J, or whatever. Yes, I've seen the film.
November Victor 5 Foxtrot, Virginia. I did not see the movie, but it looks interesting.
Okay, Whiskey 5 Echo Bravo Bravo. David in Dallas. Yes, I saw this Afterglow bait.
Just pause there. Tom, by the way, did you see the movie? I'm assuming you did, but I'm not really sure.
Yes, I did. KE5IC.
Okay. So far we have N5BB, net control Bill. I did see the movie. KE5ICX, Tom, he did see the movie. WB5OZL, Brenda, she did see the movie. KG5BZL, BZW, Jay, he did see the movie. KV5F, Virginia, who I believe is still in Arlington. She did not see the movie, but finds it interesting. And W5EBB David, who did see this fine flick. Who else would like to check into the Afterglow net on RF? Please come now. This is N5BB net control. Oh, now don't be shy. Has everybody left us? Come now. Certainly somebody else has seen the movie. I'm checking into Echolink. Oh, that's weird. So, there we go. Now the list is populated. Let's see. Well, first, does anybody else want to look at the, does anybody else want to check in on RF before we continue? N5BB. I guess not. Yeah, Jay, I think I bungled your call, KG5BZW. Let's see. How about KE0 FST, Kilo Echo 0 Fast Fourier Transform, Mike, in Olney, Illinois. It looks like you stumbled on our fine little net here, Mike. Would you like to check in? And did you see the movie, which is Interstate 60 from 2002? Over.
Good evening. Well, I have not seen the movie. I might watch it in the future. Last time I got into this net, I heard about a different movie that I hadn't watched before, and don't remember which one that was right offhand, but thought I made a note of it at the time and thought that I might watch it because all the comments were pretty interesting. So I might end up watching this one, depending on how it sounds based on y'all's comments, but I will be listening on the side. And thanks for calling me in. K0F50. Back to you.
Anytime, Mike. Our doors are wide open for visitors. Come in and visit anytime. Next, I see another visitor, Mick, KE5WBZ. Mick, would you like to check in to the net? And if so, where are you located, and did you see the movie? KE5WBZ, this is N5BB, Afterglow Net. Go ahead, Mick.
Is KE5WBZ out in the lovely little town of Pilot Point. I live in Savannah, though. I'm currently at work. I did not see the movie, but I'm always interested in listening to the sci-fi movies that you guys have. You guys recently did Frequency, I think, a little while back, one of my favorite movies. But always a pleasure just to listen to you guys and hear about the movies and your takes on them and pros and cons for them. This is KE5WBZ, back to net control.
Okay, Mick, did you say that you were in Pilot Point, Texas? Is that correct?
Is correct. About 22 miles northeast of Denver.
Yes, I know where it is. One of my grandmothers, my mother's mother, lived in Pilot Point for a number of years when she was a kid. I think she went to school there, maybe junior high school or high school. I know she spent some school years there, and then her family moved back to Austin. So I know where Pilot Point is. Very good. This is back in, let's see, 1906, 1916, probably 1918 or something. Anyway, let's move forward here. James, KG5PMN in Oklahoma, a regular. James, did you see the movie?
This is Kilo Golf 5, Papa Mike November, James up here just outside of Walters, Oklahoma. I saw the movie. Back to the net, KG5PMN.
Very good. We got another live one there. Somebody else that saw the movie. Okay, would anyone else like to check into the Afterglow net? We saw the movie Interstate 60. Would anybody else like to check in before we start doing the business? This is N5BB, net control. Well, something blipped the repeater. Try again. Would you like to check into the Afterglow net? Over.
This is Kilo 5, Kilo Oscar Bravo, Philip from Crandall. I did not see the movie.
K5, KOB. Hello, Philip. Very good. You did not see the movie. Do we have any other check-ins to the Afterglow net? This is N5BB, net control. Okay, I'm just going to pick some weird order here. And for no reason at all, I'm going to start with David, W5EBB. Hey, David, let's talk about the plot. What did you think about the plot? This is N5BB.
Hey, Bill. Well, I think a person needed to have traveled on Interstate 60 to even know about this movie. I had never heard of it. I saw online that the box office revenues were less than $9,000. So obviously, it didn't have a wide release. Maybe it only played in Denver. Variety criticized the movie's juvenile obviousness, that the themes didn't feel genuine, citing the ridiculous cross-country journey where Neil learns lessons in neoconservative fable-like morals. Well, with a criticism like that by a leading industry rag, that's a pretty good indicator in doublespeak terms that this might actually be a good movie, one with some substance, and I thought it was. I liked it. The tagline for this movie could be careful what you wish for, with the caveats that you might get it, you might not, or you might get something completely different. Let me reset. The nature of what you wish for and pursue in life and the outcomes can be influenced by both the decisions you make of your own free will as well as those by the influence of certain, let's call them external actors. But if you stay true to a course of making choices for good and not evil, things will turn out good in the end, as it did for Neil. That's not to say there won't be tests and trials along the way. They're there by design. But if you're meandering with no moral compass to guide you, in the words of Yogi Berra, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else. But Neil's wish for answers or wisdom engendered himself to the genie, jinn, leprechaun, shaman, whatever he was, O.W. Grant. Grant was impressed that Neil did not wish for a selfish, worldly, or material gain, so he acted with benevolence, not mischief, toward Neil, and honored his request. So as Neil traverses I-60, he gains wisdom not necessarily from the magic 8-ball, but from his experiences on the road, and he's able to later apply them in his real life. Now, it isn't clear whether it was all a dream or if the road trip happened and O.W. transported Neil back in time to the hospital bed after his concussion, but no matter, it had an indelible effect to Neil, and he actually experienced those things, he thought, and they stuck. To be told something is not the same as experiencing it. I think Pulitzer Prize winner Edith Wharton said it best, life is the only real counselor. Wisdom unfiltered through personal experience does not become part of the moral tissue. The multiple road stops along the way were quite varied, providing stories or vignettes within the story. Each had a different tone, awkward or funny or satirical or bleak. I'll talk about the bleak one, set in Banton, about the mother looking for a son in a town where the population is addicted to euphoria, a government-controlled drug. Now, this may be the reason why this movie isn't well known. It probably got mothballed because this subject matter unveils maybe some truths that some people were uncomfortable about. The war on drugs. It's not just about controlling drugs, it's also about controlling the people using the drugs. And as the single supplier of euphoria, Banton provided exactly what their population of drug users wanted. Some folks just want to get high. And in exchange for getting that pure product, users must perform whatever menial jobs they're told to do. Sweep the sidewalk, mow the grass, paint the fence, show up for a downtown protest march, whatever their controllers require of them. And should any user decide they don't want to do that work, or they want to go off and do their own thing, well, that's a problem. But it's a problem that can be easily addressed by adding a little fentanyl to their next pixie stick dose. Now, I thought that rave parties were a thing of the past, but maybe not. You may have noticed this pyramid in Arlington off of I-30. They host 21 and up dance parties, and a quick look at some of their upcoming theme parties include Underworld Carnival with a K, Candy World, described as a sweet and sour dance party, a tumble down the rabbit hole, a giant candy store comes to life, a world of innocent adventure evolves into a kaleidoscope of psychedelia. Good friends, happy house music, and tasty sweets will keep you up all night. Want to play? And I'm not making this up. W5EBB.
Okay, David. So David starts it off with a big bang. Now, again, I'm doing these in weird order. I'm going to go to James, KG5PMW, our neighbor to the north. What did you think about the plot, James? This is in 5BB, after Gwinnett.
KG5PMN. The plot, well, I thought the plot was rather interesting. It kind of started and flowed along, but all along the way he would wind up in getting in little situations, and which everything worked out good and good at the end for all the situations. And went in with his father. He finally told his father how he felt about the what his father was doing to him, which happens to a lot of people. You get somebody that's kind of overbearing and try to push their will on the children, and seen that happen a few times. And in the end, he kind of comes out and gets his art stuff and gets his picture done, and I don't know, it's kind of a fun halfway comedy movie, I thought. Back to the net, KG5PMN.
Yes, I think the writer's tongue was in their cheek. Let's see, next we have Jay, KG5BCW. Hey Jay, what do you say about the plot? This is in 5BB.
Well, okay, this is KG5BCW first off. The plot, I'm trying to figure out. I'm not. I should have done a little bit more research on this. I did. This is kind of a side, really, but I was trying to figure out why the film wasn't released to theaters, and well, I'm trying to remember. There are some films that seem to have been released, were planned to be released earlier. September 11th occurred, and a lot of stuff happened, and I've got this memory of, because, we got one character with a dynamite around him, I wanted to say this is one of those films that may have been released, in a way other than intended because of circumstance, but I don't know. It's like if I can't confirm it, I can't confirm it. So it is kind of interesting. It's 2002, with the terrorist, all of that, and just that character. It just it seems out of line with I think how people viewed that kind of thing. But anyways, I don't know. I have that feeling that's what happened, but I could be wrong. Anyway, so let's finish with that aside. Let me reset. that film. The characters, I mean, I do like the characters. In fact, I think the characters are probably the best part about the film, which I guess we'll be getting to later. I don't really buy this idea that whatever James Marsden's character's wish was really that original or different, such that one wish Grant would have been curious about it. But hey, you got it. I mean, it is better than some, the most basic wishes. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people actually have a lot more interesting wishes than that. So, it may not be a particularly common wish, but it's not. I wouldn't think it to be particularly uncommon either, on a relative scale. Like, I don't know, just 1% of humanity might have a wish like that. But the way the film grants explores the idea, it's like 0.00001. It's like, nah, I mean, because, hey, why film the film unless it's somewhat special, right? So, they treat it awfully special when I don't really buy it that it is. One more reset. I do like the exploration of the themes of the moral law, and a lot of it is kind of, it's really exploration of certain ideas. You could say the characters that are of any interest are really more exploration of the ideas they represent, including the towns and everything. So it's kind of cool, but I think there's other films that have done it better, although I couldn't think of it. Any things that pops to mind is American, and I don't even remember his title, but I think it's also been done by a few others. Yeah, maybe a few other sci-fi shows or whatnot. Maybe that's what I'm also thinking of. But it's still entertaining. So I have to grant that. There's some tropes that are just kind of dumb. I don't know. It's one of those things that I feel like. Also, the film that I was thinking of, it wasn't even a film, it was a series in Japanese, but it's like the idea is to be explored further and better in a TV show than in a movie, and so they were kind of limited to what they could actually do, and I think that kind of limited the film. But I know, in the end, also the happy ending is a little bit annoying, but hey, it's a film, American film, that's what you get. So, but anyway, it was kind of designed to be slightly thought-provoking and to make money. That's really all I see out of it. It wasn't terrible, wasn't great. KG5BTW.
Oh, very good, Jay. Next, I'm going to go to Brenda. Brenda, what did you think about the plot of Interstate 60? This is N5BB and the Afterglow.net. Go ahead, Brenda.
This is WV5OZL. Well, I really love this movie. It's different. It's quirky. And I think that's what killed it. I think the suits in the studio didn't understand it or thought it was too weird. So they essentially didn't promote it. And it just withered, and which is too bad. I looked and it's like, wow, I've never heard of this movie with all these big names in it. The guy who did the score also did the score for Frozen, and he had an Emmy for something. I mean, this is high-level talent they have here. The guy, what's his name, Bob Gale, who directed, produced, and wrote, he was involved in all three of the Back to the Future movies, so he knows his stuff. And I think it had all the right elements of being entertaining. It did kind of cross the line a couple of times, so sort of being eccentric. Actually, I think a more likely explanation is that the secret society of lawyers killed it because this movie made lawyers look bad. The scene with the drug addict city, that was kind of pitiful, and it just broke your heart. The truth is that's life's reality. You know, if your kid gets hooked on drugs, that's really, really a bad thing, bad story. But most everybody in it was so cute, and it had a happy ending. And the story of a young person who's being browbeaten by parents and finally decides to grab their own life and control it themselves and do what they want to do, it's a pretty common story. And it's one that works for all of us because we all relate to that. I think most of us had some of that in our youth, where parents wanted us to do something else besides what we want to do. Yeah, it was quirky. It was just quirky. That's all I can say. I laughed. It was cute. I'd like to see it again. All right, back to net, WB50ZL.
Very good, Brenda. Yes, I think a good description of the movie would be quirky for those of you that haven't seen it. Okay, Tom, you get to go next after Brenda. What did you think about the plot in Interstate 60? This is N5BB after GlowNet. Go take it away, Tom.
All right, I'll do that. Thank you, Bill, for volunteering tonight as net control. Okay, this kind of reminded me a little bit of like Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, that sort of thing, and it's going to be kind of a reflection on ourselves, of course. I liked it. I really did enjoy it quite a bit. All of the different situations are things that actually kind of happen anyway. They are stylized and quirky and over the top in many ways, but are they really? I'm not so sure. The gal looking for perfect sex, we know that. The fellow, I'm looking through the list here, who consumes unnatural quantities of food and drink. Be careful what you wish for, and you end up with more than you can possibly imagine. A little bit of a Twilight Zone twist there, I thought. Very well done, by the way. That scene is probably the one that's least remembered, but I think it was one of the best. Let's see, the ex-advertiser on a crusade to punish dishonesty. We know people like that. Why do they not do things the way they're supposed to? What is wrong? And then the great equalizer for him is that I'm going to blow you all up. So, well, that's kind of creepy in ways that you can imagine, especially over recently. But again, I think this movie has a tendency to actually reflect some of the realities that we all experience and perceive. Let's see. The rave parties, which is something that David mentioned earlier. thought that was interesting because not only is it a rave party, but we have in our society now drugs, opiates that are a real problem that have been prescribed and overprescribed. Actually, that's a real thing today. It wasn't back in 2002 when this movie was made. I think they were more about what was going on, kind of in the immediacy and in our culture at the time, with and kids going to rave parties and that. But in reality, it really reflects an even a bigger thing that's going on right now. So I thought that was quite interesting. Also, you've got we'll get to characterizations, but the police department's complicit in it. Society is complicit in it. Hey, we can get things done if we get everybody hooked on drugs. Isn't that interesting? Makes you really wonder, because in some ways that's exactly what happens, and a little unhappy about it. Then finally, the art of the Museum of Art Front. I thought that was brilliant. I wasn't expecting that, where everybody's critical over actual masterpieces. And it was great, because that does happen. The critics become, and you can be a critic too. I mean, we all are. When you look at work and you try and figure out what exactly is going on, and you start picking it apart and not realizing, just like this movie didn't get the greatest reviews, but I thought it was quite good. Critics didn't see what was going on, and they didn't even understand how they were being criticized in one of the vignettes. That it must be a higher standard because my standard is higher, but it's arbitrary. I thought that was pretty cool too. So I enjoyed the movie. I liked the ending. It made sense to me in the end. And of course, we don't know. Does Alice come out of the looking glass? Does she return? Is she out of the rabbit hole? I don't know. Probably. It doesn't matter, because in the end, and I think David mentioned this too, it doesn't matter the methodology. He comes out as a perceived and different individual through that experience, whatever happened. And I thought that was really great. So I liked the movie. I'll go back and watch it again. I think it did get a bad rap. I think it should have gotten better reviews, and it should have been more widely seen by audiences. Now, is it heavy like, let me reset. Was it super detailed and needed heavy detail like our movie last week, which I couldn't read my notes? No, not necessarily. They both accomplish kind of the same thing of sorts. Is what happens, and can you determine your own life? Yes, you can. One in multiple ways. You can pick or not pick a direction. In this case, you pick a direction in order to make it happen. So there's some similarities there. Somewhat simplistic, yeah, but I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. It was very entertaining. Characters are great. The actors are people we know mostly. And no, I did not know Gary Oldman was OW, One Wish Grant. I thought that was so cool. When you don't even know who the guy is and you realize he's one of your favorite actors, that's pretty amazing. But we'll get to that later. Back to net control, KE5I6.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. Let me pause now and see if anybody would like to check in to the Afterglow net. Tonight we're discussing the 2002 flick Interstate 60. If you'd like to check in, please come now with your name and call sign. This is N5BB. Nothing heard. Now I'm going to get comments, if they have any, or questions if they have any, from the visitors who did not see the movie. So Virginia, you're the first. KV5F. Do you have any comments or questions, Virginia? This is N5BB, AftergloNet. Over.
N5BB, this is NV5F, November Victor 5 Fox. Well, all the descriptions make it sound even more interesting. I did watch a trailer for it and was thinking about watching it this evening, and I got kind of wound up in other things. but it sounds like it's one of those movies that seems obvious, and then if you really, really dig a little deeper, you figure out that it might even be intended to seem obvious, and then it's actually got some really, much more subtle things going on in it, than the sort of conventional aspects of the plot might reveal right away. So it does make me interested in just everybody's little pieces of the puzzle. Even though it's got a lot of spoilers, doesn't bother me much. I still would like to see the movie. So that's my main comment at the moment. I appreciate you bringing me in for that. N5BB in the net, NV5F.
Well, very good, Virginia. Yeah, I think our discussion doesn't really spoil it. It wouldn't for me. If you really look at the movie, it's as you have to experience it to understand it, which is exactly the same as the topic of the movie. You can't explain it. Things are not explained in this movie. You have to experience them. That's the whole issue here. So you have to see it if you want to understand it. Thank you, Virginia. KE0FFT, Mike, you're not here anymore, are you? Yep, I don't see Mike on Echolink anymore. Mick, KE5WBZ, you're still checked into Echolink. Would you like to make any comments or questions there, Mick? Go ahead.
This KE5WBZ, it does sound like a definitely interesting movie. Some of the things, from what I've been listening to and reading on the IMDb and some of the other websites, some of the things give you an idea of a parallel. You notices things from before that he should know, and he sees them in his dream or in his escapades, while he's in the hospital, or however that works out. But it sounds rather interesting, and I might just have to pick up the movie, watch it, try and figure out how some of those things come into play a little bit more. Christopher Lloyd, as one of the actors, is one of my favorites as well. So it's good to see him there. But yeah, it does sound like a definitely interesting movie. KE5WBZ, back to net control.
Yes, Christopher Lloyd is a key character. He actually makes everything happen. If you look at it, he sends the protagonist on his way to do the journey, kind of like a La Mancha thing. Anyway, very good. Okay, next, Philip, K5KOB in Crandall. Are you still here, Philip? And if so, would you like to make any comments? This is N5BB AfterglowNet. Philip, you're very noisy right now, noisier than you were earlier, but we got the idea that that's all you wanted to say. Okay, very good. Thank you for listening to us. Okay, it's my turn now to talk about the plot. This is N5BB AfterglowNet, and for those listening, we're talking about the movie Interstate 60 from 2002. So I kind of agree with Tom. To me, this was a mixture of Alice in Wonderland and the Wizard of Oz kind of stories. And you've heard other stories like this before. When something happens to somebody, and in the Wizard of Oz, she's sick in bed, very sick. And in this movie, again, the protagonist, Neil, has been hit on the head and he's in a hospital bed. And the character goes off on an escapade. And in all these kinds of things, there's something they have to do. Dorothy is trying to get back to Kansas, and she's got to go on the yellow brick road and do all these things. She's got this path that she's got to get on. And in a different way, Alice in Wonderland, she has her own little escapades she has to go through. And in this movie, it's another similar kind of, it's kind of like the Odyssey, where there's these series of tasks you got to do, or the stories of Hercules or Hercules. You've got to go and do these tasks in order to get to the chosen target at the end. So, you know, the basic theme of the movie is a very old standard theme that has been available long before there were movies. And they threw in the young adult trying to figure out what he's going to do with his life. Where have we seen this before? Well, there's a clue about what's going to be going on in the whole movie. Who's the first person you see out there in his car, so self-centered? Michael J. Fox. Well, we've seen him before in movies where there's something similar happens. What is he going to do with his life? And there's a car involved. So to me, they were kind of signaling with Michael J. Fox up there in that first scene that it was going to be involved with a car and some kind of young coming-of-age kind of thing. So I thought that was very interesting, throwing him in up there in that little throwaway scene at the front where they killed him off. So they didn't have to worry about using him the rest of the movie. I mean, have you ever seen a character killed off so quickly and in such a weird fashion? I mean, he got what he wanted, and in getting what he wanted, he was instantly killed. I view this like those other stories as a morality play, and in this one it's very specific. What do you got? You got sex, you've got drugs, you've got search for love, you've got money versus art, and what you want to, different kinds of motives for what you're going to do in your life. It's a big morality play in this thing. You've got the police that they're bad, but they're doing something for what they believe is a moral reason. None of the cops in this were doing capricious things. They were doing things for a reason. The judge and all the lawyers in the courtroom, they were doing things for a very logical reason, and from their own viewpoint, it was a very moral, straightforward thing. But it was... So that this whole thing kind of inverted the normal logic of this morality thing. Like the young lady there on the road that's, what does he do? He turns her down and kicks her out. That's kind of inverting that normal story. A lot of this is kind of the inversion of what normally would happen in something. So I think the writers of this, I didn't even notice who wrote it, but I thought they kind of had fun. Let's put it that way. my guess is they were having all kind of fun saying, what are we going to do next? How are we going to do it? You know, what are we going to name that city? Oh, we're going to name it More Law. I'm sure there's something about the name Denver, and I'm missing it, but I'm sure something about Denver, not Denver, but Denver. At first I thought it was going to be Denver, what is it, Connecticut or something? But I don't know where they got that name from. But I think the authors had a lot of fun with that. Anyway, I like the plot. Of course, if you look at it, it's very ludicrous. But what can we say? This is a fantasy movie. It's no different than something like The Wizard of Oz. It's a fantasy movie. He's meeting people that can't possibly be true. You know, a person can't possibly have dynamite strapped to his body and a little controller and open it up. It's just totally ludicrous. So you're led to believe, I think, by the end of the movie that it was all kind of a dream sequence. But, of course, they throw in the deja vu for his the lady he gets together with there at the end, the girl he gets together with. You know, was it real or was it just a dream? Standard theme we've heard in many other stories. Okay, that's all I have. Now, let's start over again and talk about characterization. David, W5EBB, what'd you think about characterization? This is N5BB, Afterglow.net.
Well, this one will be briefer than the previous round, I promise. Well, I liked all the characters. I thought the actors they chose were good in their parts, and there are probably some Easter eggs in this movie that there probably aren't enough viewers to have a forum of conversation to figure them all out. But all these numbers and letters, like Chris Cooper's business card, whatever his character's name, had a state called WE. It's like, okay, wait, Wyoming? Nope, that's not. There is no postal code for WE. We. But yeah, I thought the characters were great. But I want to focus on, I guess, OW's character, One Wish, the genie, which presumably that's what he is. Now, the genies go back a long time, way before Barbara Eden, way before Aladdin. Genies date back to around 630 CE, when the Quran was written. The genie is a reference to the jinn, mentioned many times in the Quran. The jinn are a creation of God made from fire, angels made from light, and man made from clay or earth. And when God created Adam, he commanded the assembled jinn to bow prostrate in honor of this new creation, man. But one of the jinn, named Iblis, refused, insisting that man was inferior to him and he would therefore not bow down. And this angered God, and he was going to destroy Iblis, but Iblis asked instead that his sentence be deferred until Judgment Day, and God agreed. Iblis is generally equated with the Old Testament Satan, or adversary. And until Judgment Day, Iblis and the other jinn, or genies, would dedicate themselves to the goal of seducing man into rebelling against God and joining them. Iblis said, you have consigned me to perversity. I will surely glamorize evil for them on earth, and I will surely pervert them, all except your dedicated servants among them. Now, that said, not all of the jinn are evil to humans. Some are helpful, some are capricious, like O.W. Grant, but Iblis and his loyal jinn and recruited humans are a constant stumbling block for the rest of us, putting us to task, luring us through intrigue, craftiness, and temptation with offers of worldly pleasures and material gains. One wish. It sounds a lot like The Secret in secular terms, or the preachings of prosperity ministries, where if you want something bad enough, all you have to do is pray or think about it really, really hard. Make it your every waking thought to covet that new job, that new house, that new car, whatever you want. Just ask or pray for it intently. But be careful what you ask for, and be careful who you're asking. that wish or prayer may not be received by who or what you thought. If you're not sure, a quality Kevlar jacket might be a good investment, just in case. W5EBB.
Okay, David's the most philosophical tonight, but very interesting talking about the genie versus Satan kind of thing. Did you notice that at one point in the movie, who was it? Was it Ray? It was Ray or OW, I forget which. They asked him, Neil asked him, "Are you Satan?" He says, "Well, sure." And then Neil immediately said, "Nah." So that was another one of those impossible things to determine. Okay, next. James, KG5PMN. James, you have comments about characterization? This is N5BB after calling in. Well, James is still logged into Echolink. Maybe he's away from the radio. James, are you still there? KG5PMN, N5BB. Nothing heard. Let's skip ahead. Jay, KG5BZW. What do you think about characterization? This is N5BB.
This is KG5BGW. Characterization. I kind of like One Wish Grant. I have to admit that not just because it's Gary Oldman. It's the character. I like how it was written. I like how he was deliberately deliberately unspecific, and that, well, him and Ray were both that way, and we don't get, we kind of get the idea that can kind of went into that, the Ginny aspect and all that. I'll think again and add really to that. That bit was pretty good. I just kind of thought that I don't know. Some aspects, I think, like the character that perfect sex. They're just I don't know what they were thinking about when they wrote that character. Morlaw was pretty good. The character that the love of his life, I didn't really like him. The whole aspect of that chase. I guess it's an understandable chase, and that would be why people would have maybe gone for that. But she was just such a. I mean, it was. I thought the actors are okay, but I thought they made her bland. It was blandly. She was blandly likable. It was like there was just nothing wrong with her. Oh, she farts, and that was what made her not, whatever. And I don't know. I can't even remember. It was some dumb fart joke or something that's supposed to make her special. And it's just like, no, not really. It's like, I'm sure. I'm trying to remember. It seems like I watched her in something that was actually legitimately decent. I just couldn't not with this film. Marsden's character. I was like, I don't know. Can't think of his name. I can think of Christopher Lloyd and Oldman's name, character's names. I can't think of Marsden. Maybe because it's been a while since I've seen Marsden, him in something. I was like, oh, that actor, which reminds me of something, but I don't know. It's like I guess there's also there may be some video game character that also has the name Marsden, which. But I also know just it's like this actor. He's been around for a while. I don't know. There's certain things stand out to me and certain things don't. I think I'm getting off track a little bit there. Let me reset. I mean, his character was likable. It was, you know, he did a pretty good job, honestly. And also the father was, I mean, kind of stereotypical, well, things are going to be my way. He's going, you know, slightly authoritarian father figure that, you know, people want to kind of rebel against. That's fine, but it's kind of, it's been done. It's kind of hard because I'm looking at this film, you know, 20 years onward, so maybe, you know, some of these things have been done since then, and it just kind of makes the original look, you know, trite or whatever, but maybe I've even seen this film or parts of it, because Christopher Lloyd's character, it's such a Christopher Lloyd character, you know. It just, it's like, yeah, it very much fits him. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised given, you know, who directed it and everything. It was probably kind of written for him a little bit. The police officer, I like, oh, shoot. And forgive me for forgetting this guy's name, but I thought he was a perfect, somewhat evil cop. Let's say that Snake. What's his name? I don't know. That was fine. I actually kind of liked seeing him in that, even though, you know, it was evil. But, so, you know, it's like the characters. I kind of like the characters. It's just some aspects of the plot I just don't like. I'll leave it at that. KG5BTW.
Okay, Jay. Yes, as Tom filled in, the cop's name was Captain Eyes, played by Kurt Russell, who played that just straight, which I thought was interesting. Brenda, it's your turn. What do you think about the characterization in Interstate 60? This is in 5BB, Afterglow.net.
This is WB50ZL. Well, I wouldn't fault the characterization at all. Give me a second. I had to get a sip of water. But the whole thing is pretty formulaic, despite being weird or eccentric. You know, a young man is on a quest and he's being tested. And so the young man is wholesome and handsome and smart and good-hearted. And as he is tested, he passes all these tests and comes out the other side with his integrity and having grown mentally and emotionally a lot. So, you think Star Wars is a quest movie, Lord of the Rings, all of those. You've got a young boy or young boys who are seeking. They've got a mission or some kind of a quest. Then, of course, there's the young lady, the damsel that they have to save, and she's always a love interest. You might have a wizard, Obi-Wan, the guy in the Lord of the Rings, and Grant in this movie. And then you've got various little characters along the way, which might be real important to the story and might not, but they were all really well cast, I thought. And you just wonder, how did they get Anne Margaret to do this? This thing was done on a pretty low budget, so I'm guessing maybe these actors did this as a favor or something, or just for the fun of it. I don't know. Anyway, the characters were pretty well cast, all of them, because they all fit into the narrative of this quest movie. And most of them were right on the mark, I will have to say. All right, back to net, WB50ZL.
Very good, Brenda. Let's move right ahead with Tom. Tom, what did you think about the characterization in Interstate 60? This is in 5BB, Afterglow.
Well, thank you, Bill. And in my playful thing on, having A-list actors in this art film, it plays out. I love everybody who was in this film. One of the characters, of course, the main character, the Neil Oliver character, James Marsden, I thought, I know this guy from somewhere. I can't remember where, and I figured it out. I actually looked him up online. I watched the musical version of Hairspray, which in and of itself is kind of a crazy movie. He played Corny Collins in that. He was the Corny Collins, and yeah, he was corny. He was the guy who ran kind of the American Bandstand thing in the movie. So that's where I'd seen him from. I said, I know this guy from somewhere, and that's where I know him from. He did a great job as Neil Oliver. Gary Oldman, the fact that I didn't recognize Gary Oldman yet again in a movie is a testament to the guy's acting ability. He plays one Wish Grant, the genie, as David said. He did a marvelous job. It was kind of a stock character of sorts, but it was a lot of fun. And any movie with Gary Oldman, I enjoy no matter what. Christopher Lloyd is Ray. We expected that. Christopher Lloyd plays Christopher Lloyd. Kurt Russell as Captain Ives. I loved it. I thought it was great. Yeah, I did the same thing. I said, Snake! And he kind of was that a little bit, at least in name. Hey, we got to keep the trains running. And this works out well, and everybody's fine. And they got the little stick and everything to give to everybody, and they become instantly addicted. But he's over there with his pack of cigarettes. I said, that's good enough for me. Somebody's got to run this show, and it's going to be me. And I'm sure he does really well doing that. So that was interesting. Michael J. Fox, of course, as Mr. Baker for 5 minutes. It's great. I loved it. And Margaret was great, too. Another one that they brought in as Mrs. James. I loved her. Amy Johnson as Laura was good as let's see, was she the love interest? There were two Amy's. I think she was the love interest. I get mixed up sometimes. So they were all very good. You can go down the entire list, but I thought all of them may have been cast to type, with the exception of maybe Oldman. but it was very, very entertaining. It was a lot of fun. And I think you mentioned it, Bill. It looked like everybody was having fun making this movie, and I think that it's very true. It showed, and it was very entertaining. I go back and watch it again. I'm sure there's some lines and interesting things that I may have missed. The critics thought that they were playing two stereotypical characters. Well, maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know. Movies are meant to make you think. Besides just making money, stories are made to make you think. Maybe if you want to take it to a broader level. So this one makes you think. It's many of the themes are common themes, as you mentioned in the last round. Maybe the characters are common as well, but they fit the purpose of the movie perfectly, and I thought they did a great job. I won't go any further with that. I enjoyed it very much. It was more of a lightweight movie than last week, where I had notes and graphs and I couldn't even read them. This one was just plain enjoyable. I enjoyed the heck out of it. KE5ICX.
Very good, Tom. Yeah, I can't think of any point in this movie where I wanted to stop. I wanted to see what was coming next. And that's one thing it kind of tells you about a movie. We've had some real stinkers where I just didn't see the second part of the movie because I just didn't care. With this movie, well, even though it wasn't a really, top-end story, we still cared enough. Okay, next, after Tom, we have Virginia. Virginia, I know you didn't see it. You want to make any comments? In V5F, sorry I missed your call up earlier, Virginia. This is N5BB, after Gwinnett.
N5BB in the net, this is NV5F. Oh, no worries about the call. I do that all the time. I've been listening, and it's funny. Last night I was watching a movie that is kind of classic, quirky, campy on purpose, and had a similar vibe, except the people. It's one of those movies that had everybody in it, but at that point, they were kind of on the verge of being everybody. And the movie I was watching last night was Buckaroo Banzai, and it had all these people in it that you look at and you go, golly, look at all these people that are in this movie. Of course, that was in 1984, and I know some of the people that were in it were already starting to get to be big names, and they probably were just like, hey, I want to be in this kind of goofy B comic book science fiction kind of movie just for the fun of it. But it's just kind of a funny parallel, because I was watching it last night, and I just kind of thought of that while you guys were talking about it. And the one, I guess, characterization criticism I have for that movie is that I sat and watched the whole movie, and at the end, I didn't really care about anybody in it. It was supposed to be very clever and full of these, kind of getting to be well-known people, and it was supposed to be kind of this broader, bigger-than-life story with a bigger-than-life character. And the sad thing is, there wasn't really a character arc, and at the end, I didn't really care about the characters. So I'm guessing that Interstate 60 probably has a little more going for it in that department. So that'll be my comment in 5BB and the net in V5F.
Okay, very good, Virginia. Although at the end of the movie, it's kind of a fantasy thing, so it means a lot of the characters that were developed during the movie, you don't know if you should care about them anymore. Even the interest, Lynn Linden, she didn't really remember what happened. So these movies where it's all a dream, it's a little hard to know how to think of it. You kind of have to suspend disbelief at the end. Okay, very good, Virginia. Next. Who is next? Mick in Pilot Point. Do you want to make any more comments, Mick? Are you still there in 5BB? That's KE5WBZ.
This is K5WBZ. No comments other than it does sound like an interesting movie to watch. K5WBZ, back net.
Okay, very good, Mick. Philip and Crandall, K5KOB. Philip, you were just fading in the noise before. Do you want to try talking about characterization now, or are you still there in 5BB? I believe we lost Philip. Okay, it's my turn. This is N5BB Afterglow Net. Do we have any really late check-ins to the net? Over.
I thought you'd never ask. K5 JDW Mobile, John and Coppell.
K5JDW. John, did you see the movie, Interstate 60? A 2002 movie? And do you have any comments?
I just want to say hello to the gang. No, I've not seen the movie, never even heard of it. So, but you make it sound just interesting enough to. It's almost like Siskel and Ebert. Sometimes I listen in to see if I want to see it. I'm just out in the garage painting doors while I'm listening, and haven't heard a check-in in a while. Just want to say hello. So I will just listen in the background. No need to call on me again. Just in for the count. K5 JDW.
Okay. Well, I did ask earlier, but okay, very good. Do we have any other check-ins to the net? Then it's my turn to make comments about characterization. This is N5BB, Afterglow Net. And for those listening, we're talking about Interstate 60. And for John and the others, like Virginia, that might still be listening, and Nick, there is no Interstate 60. So that's the reason they gave it this name. There is no Interstate 50 and 60. Those interstate numbers were purposely left out. And for those listening that haven't seen it, if you're wondering, what do you mean it doesn't exist? Well, this is a little bit of an alternate reality kind of movie, and suddenly he gets on Interstate 60. But guess what? It's not a divided highway, which they explain away, which is in a weird way. They did that because I'm sure they couldn't find a divided interstate highway to film this on. It would have been too dangerous. Okay, my comments about characterization. Well, O.W. Grant and Ray, who were they cousins or brothers? I think they were cousins. Were obviously some kind of, I don't know, genie or something. They didn't seem to be aliens. They seemed to be mischievous souls, which is kind of what I think of as a genie. And I think they characterize them pretty good. I think that Christopher Lloyd and Gary Oldman played those pretty well, probably exactly as directed and written. And they were both interesting characters. Of course, O.W. Grant had a second name, Robin Fields. Or no, I guess Ray had a second name, Robin Fields. Ray sent a package to himself. No, he sent it to O.W. That's right. O.W. Grant was who the package was directed to. Let's see. Amy Smart played Lynn Linden, and she played it pretty over the top, like when he gets her out of jail and she swears like a drunken sailor and everything, and then gets off of that. So she did a pretty good job with that, I thought. It's supposed to be over the top. I mean, this whole movie is tongue-in-cheek. You're supposed to be kind of laughing while you're watching it at the same time, so that's just the way the movie was written. Tolbert, Deep Stomach, I thought that character was played very well. He just matter-of-factly can eat everything in front of him, and he's still hungry because he got his wish. Michael J. Fox played Michael J. Fox, right? Isn't that the standard Michael J. Fox character? He's talking on his phone, he make him mad, he throws his phone down. I've seen that same Michael J. Fox character in other things. And Kurt Russell was also played kind of a character I've seen him play before, kind of a calm, kind of authority figure, but not over the top, playing by the rules in this case. I thought the character Bob Cody, I forget what... Oh, that was Chris Cooper. Bob Cody, the truth guy with the bomb. He played that straight, and he, weird character, but I think he did a good job on that. So again, I thought Neil was played well. So again, I thought all the characters were played well by the actors, and I thought the direction was also just fine with me. I didn't have any problem with any of that. This movie is kind of about fate, and it's a little philosophical movie about whether, as O.W. says several times, what's going to happen, happens. Although O.W. seems to have a way of making people's wishes happen. That's all I can say. Okay. So time for the last go-around. We're getting late. It's 4 minutes until midnight. Does anybody else have any other comments about anything else in the movie? Any final comments about the themes in the movie, the philosophy, about were they genies? Was it a dream sequence? How was the music? Anything else about the movie or the scenes? A lot of it was, some of it was filmed near Phoenix, I think, out in Arizona. Any other comments about anything else in the movie? Please come with your call sign only. This is N5BB, Afterglow Movie. Give me your call sign if you want to say anything else.
W5EBB.
Does anybody else have any comments besides David? Well, David, we'll go with your comments and see if anybody else has any replies. W5EBB, this is N5BB. Go right ahead and tie it all up, David.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Well, there is a US 60, a Highway 60, that runs through West Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. I think it terminates in California. It looks pretty scenic. The VLA scene in the movie Contact is off of US 60, and it looks not unlike what was depicted in this movie, actually. I don't know where the movie was filmed. A little bit about special effects. The Magic 8 Ball was a simple but well-done special effects. You know, the answers were playful, pithy, and kind of snarky sometimes. It was almost like another character, but probably an encapsulated version of OW. Now, OW's smoke was green, and that effect was okay, but why green? Green equals poison. It's the yuck emoticon or emoji. Well, I guess those didn't exist in 2002. But why not blue, red, or magenta? And I'm sure there was a meeting where this was discussed at length. It's important. The monkey carving on OW's pipe with the angry snarl looked pretty vicious. It looked less like a monkey and more like Chewbacca on the Death Star after Luke tried to put handcuffs on him before heading off to cell block AA-23 to rescue the princess. But this may be an instance of pareidolia, recalling a scene from a movie I haven't seen in several years, but have seen probably 100 times. Anyway, I thought this was a good movie, enjoyed it. Thanks for the net, W5EBB.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the special effects, David. I think most of the movie was filmed in Arizona. When I looked it up, it looked like, but it was filmed. There were some scenes filmed in Canada, I think. I think most of it was filmed on Arizona, some kind of winding road areas. Okay. Does anybody else have any more comments after David's before we close this thing down? This is N5BB Afterglow.net. Any more comments or check-ins? It's 11:59, and I pronounce this net finished. Phoenix. The end. Okay, Tom, what's going on next week? KE5 ICX N5BB.
All right, well, thank you, Bill, and thanks for a really great net. You did an excellent job. Next week's movie is called Metropia, a 2009 English language animated science fiction film by a guy named Tariq Salah. So, looks like it could be very interesting. We've only done one other animated show before this, so I'm very curious about it. If you'd like to get more information on it, you can go to Facebook if you want to and look for Afterglow Movie. That's 2 words, Afterglow and Movie, and sign up there. Or if you're not a Facebook fan, you can go ahead and send me an email at my call sign, Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray, KE5ICX at yahoo.com. And what I do is I send out the links and information on next week's movie in usually Sunday. 99% of the time I get Sunday in. Sometimes I miss it and go to Monday. But I try and send you the information. I give you multiple links. Some of them are paid. Nearly 99% of the time they are free. And depending on how you want to watch the movies, with or without commercials, it's up to you. So that's it from me, Bill. Metropia is the movie from 2009 for next week. KE5ICX.
Very good, Tom. Hey, it says this is a Swedish movie. Do you know, is it subtitled or is the speaking in English? I should play the trailer. Maybe I can find out.
It says in the first sentence it's a 2009 English language animated science fiction film, so it's in English. KE5ICX.
Okay. Well, look, it's from Tribeca Film, even though something about it is from Sweden. Wow, this looks rather weird. A complex story of a misaligned man, though good intent, creating a nightmarish dystopian existence. Not maligned, but misaligned man. Well, that should be interesting. It's got Vincent Gallo and Juliette Lewis in it. Okay, well, thank you, Tom. We'll be interested in seeing this movie for next week. Goodbye to all, And to all a good night. This is N5BB. Bye.
Thanks all you guys for a very interesting evening. I can't talk. K5JDW.
Okay, John. Don't forget, early Monday morning, have to look and see exactly when, the Ingenuity helicopter, they say they're going to try